Hey, good morning everyone. It's Charlie Craven and I am back to tie you, I don't know, maybe today I'll tie a fly. And the one I'm going to tie for you today is called a Stuck in the Shuck Midge. So let me put this one back in here for you. Got this hook stuck in my finger now, so that's sort of extra special. This little fly is called a Stuck in the Shuck Midge, and kind of an emerging midge pattern. It's kind of a fun one and pretty simple. Goes along with the Griffith snap that we have got on here as well. So I'm going to show you how to go about this one. I'm going to start off with a Tiemco 101 size 18 and some black 8/0 unit thread. And so the first thing I'm going to do is I'll start this thread just up, an eye length or half an eye length behind the hook eye. And I'm going to wrap back over the shank all the way to the bend. And then for the shuck, I'm going to use a little bit of amber Zelon or Darlon. This is Darlon here, which I actually kind of like a little bit better for this fly just because it's a little bit finer fiber. Darlon and Zelon are very similar materials. Darlon is just a finer fiber. So I'm going to take this clump and measure it about a shank length long. And you can see the end of that is sort of ragged. I like that. So I'm going to tie this in here at the bend. Get a couple turns on it, and you can sort of tweak the length down if you need to. About like so. Then I'm going to wrap forward over what's left, just short of our starting point, and I'll cut that off. Now the shellback on this is typically Antron or Zelon or Darlon as well. What I'm going to use instead is some white polypropylene macrame yarn. I figure I'll add a little flotation to this fly while I'm at it. So I'm going to tie this in, and because this end is ragged, I'm going to tie this in with a pinch wrap or just a loose turn. I'll cut that end down square. And then I want to stretch that tight and keep it on top, and I want to wrap all the way back over it to the bit of the hook. And make sure you get right up there to the base of the tail. And then I'll come forward and I'm just going to build a thin thread body, or thread abdomen, there on the back end of the hook. Now I'm going to take a grizzly feather that is sized to the hook, so I want it fairly small. And I'm going to strip a little bit of bare stem there. I'll tie this in with the inside toward the shank. And I want maybe a little more than the front third of the hook there in front of that tie down. And then for the thorax, I'm going to take some Peacock Herl from the eye. And the reason I like it from the eye is this is much finer stuff, and I've got about a half dozen. I have exactly a half dozen of these. I'm going to cut the tip in so that they're all even. I'll tie these in with the turn and pull them down to length. I want them tied down behind my index point. And I'll wrap forward up to the index point. I'm going to wrap this Peacock Herl for the thorax. Tie that off with a couple of turns. Just clean that head up. And then I'll take my grizzly feather and I'm going to palmer it through the thorax here. So sort of spaced wraps. 3 or 4 turns. It's not going to take much on a little fly like this. Tie that off, trim that out of there, just a turn or two over it, and then I'm going to take my macrame yarn here, and I want to pull this tight up over the top, and you kind of work it down in between the hackle, and I'll tie that off with a couple of turns here just up behind the eye, and then rather than snip that off, what I'm going to do is fold it back and tie it down, and then I'll whip finish right on top of that. I'll come in and trim that thread out, and then I'll nip that off. Just get that down close. And that is the Stuck in the Shuck Midge. Now, if you want this to float lower, you can certainly come in, trim this hackle off the bottom, make this fly sit a little a little flatter on the surface. But typically, I won't do that ahead of time. Typically, I'll leave those fibers on there long, and I'll trim them while I'm fishing if I feel like I need it to sit a little lower. That's a cool little bug. Imitates the adult midge. Is kind of with that white poly across the top is sort of the wings starting to come out of the shuck. This is a good fly for especially those bigger midges. It worked really well for the small ones, but it really does lend itself well for those bigger midges that you can sometimes get in the springtime. And simple little fly. You should probably have a few in your box, so don't make me say it twice. Just go tie some. Put them in there. You can thank me later. Alright guys, thanks for watching. I'll be back soon.